say you feel what like over time for this love of mine. Meanwhile, you feel touch me like you need it, need it, need it. So come say it to me like you mean it, mean it, mean it. You and I both know you feel it.
6:21 in Trinidad and Tobago. As I'm happy to say that our guests are here on time for discussion this morning. In our focus on the family series, we want to talk about Carnival and sexuality, because sexuality and the increase in sexual behavior is one of the things associated with the Carnival season. Well, that cannot be said or associated with every entertainer or patron. It's no secret that the urge to take a wine has the potential to do some damage in what is sometimes referred to as horning season. We're coming up with all the phrases, right? You know, I mean, people might be smiling to themselves and so on, but we want to look at it in the context of social consequences from an adult perspective, because we're going to continue this dialogue at another time as to the impact on children. And that's the other part two, which will follow at another time. Maybe next week we'll see how it goes. Whether it's the issue of a personal or family relationship, issues related to sexual harassment or worse, intimate partner violence, it's important that we have these discussions, especially during the Carnival season. Well, we have two guests here with us who are going to offer their perspective. It is the national festival, and people sometimes take exception to negative perceptions of the national festival, but it has to be real. And I mean, any part of being real is acknowledging both the positive and the negative. In the same way, like when we talk about cricket and so on, people just get vexed when you beat up on the West Indies team and so on. But there's a lot to beat up on them for, because of the results and so on. But they won the last test match, so there is. But part of critical analysis is to face up to reality, because it's something that we don't often want to do to a significant extent. But critical analysis is about facing up to the reality of situations, certainly from the perspectives of the informed guests that we have on the show. And two of those informed guests are with us this morning. Kelly McFarlane, clinical psychologist and public relations officer of the Trinidad and Tobago Association of Psychologists. And Rondell Fields, as I was talking about cricket, sometimes cricketer. We saw the video quite a few months ago where he tried to present himself as the new West Indies opening batsman with the big hook shot that dropped right by leg slip. But we won't show that video again. He is the president of the Single Fathers Association. He's not in his capacity here as a executive member, vice president of TADA. It's the Single Fathers Association. He making noise this morning about used car dealers and all of the issues that they have to face. Good morning to you both. Thanks very much for joining us. Should mention as well that we had invited the chairperson of the Equal Opportunities Commission, Lynette Sweet, to be with us, but her schedule didn't allow it because it would have been interesting to get that perspective as well from her experience, not just from a legal point of view, but from the overarching point of view of the Equal Opportunities Commission. So let's get going. Let me invite Ms. McFarlane to offer a perspective. When we talk about Carnival and sexuality, just that broad umbrella. How do you see that terminology, that perspective when we talk Carnival and sexuality?
Well, I think the images that are projected on TV from Carnival on TV, on social media and so on are quite similar to sort of erotic images, I guess, because of the way that we dance and how close we get to each other. We also, of course, we consider the influence of alcohol and of the collective behavior, so to speak, which is a term that kind of has to do with, you know, when you're in part of a big crowd, you kind of start behaving like the rest of the crowd, and it just kind of spirals.
So like a herd mentality kind of thing. Everybody else doing it, so it feels comfortable to behave in a certain way.
Absolutely, and then the music kind of drives it, and the adrenaline that comes from all of those things combined. So you get that.
Rondell Fields, from your perspective, and the issue is not so much whether one is a Carnival person or not a Carnival person. From your own point of view as to the whole question of Carnival and the sexuality and because of the nature of the event that is associated with it, what is your own view on that aspect of Carnival?
I mean, I think historically it's been promoted as a pleasurable time, a pleasurable season, fun time, relaxation. You have a stress going through the economy right now. You need to relax. It's an unwinding moment. So it's always presented as pleasurable, as you would, I mean, as we would pitch to, we would always talk about the negatives and the positives. Some people will highlight the vulgarity. Some people will highlight also the opportunity to earn revenue. People will show positives and negatives. And just say, as a personal perspective, some people will highlight spirituality. Some people will highlight personality. Some people will highlight rape culture. A number of issues in that whole discussion that is so broad that we could delve into any direction of it. So, I mean, definitely, I mean, but the main focus, I think, that's historically promoted. It's pleasurable. It's a time to relax, a time to unwind. And then unwinding, you know, it could go either way. Sometimes some people find you unwind too much. Some find you unwind too little. Some need alcohol to unwind. Some need drugs to unwind. So, I mean, it's on my personal perspective, I mean, it's something that people need to be careful with because of the unwind. They need to be mindful of what you do. Nobody can tell you what to do. But at least you have to remember, you must remember that, I mean, you must stay within the parameters of the law while you're doing your unwinding. You must be respectful while you're unwinding. Certain guidelines must be followed, irregardless.
And I think that is where the issue comes in, as far as that barrier or that boundary between unwinding to a certain point, and which then becomes irresponsible behavior or infringing on somebody else's rights. And Mr. Fallon, in that sense, how difficult is that? Because, I mean, just yesterday having a dialogue with Sergeant Ansel Ford in our police segment, talking about what is the law and what is not, what you should do and shouldn't do. Is it impossible when you are in an environment where a behavior is moving towards a particular type, whether it's excessive drinking, whether it's excessive whining and gyrating and whatever else it is, that you can actually obey boundaries in an environment like that?
It's not impossible, but the thing with us and Carnival is that drinking excessive amounts of alcohol is almost kind of part of that. A lot of the fats, and even on the road on Carnival Monday and Tuesday, alcohol is, well, included, right? And once remember that alcohol has an impact on the brain that helps to disinhibit our behaviors, help us not recognize social cues or misinterpret social cues. We start feeling almost invincible. So things that we would normally do, we may do now. And so we have to look at those factors, and that especially the alcohol drinking is something that really impacts on that.
And you mentioned, you know, that you would do things that you wouldn't normally do. It brings up the issue of consequences for going across those boundaries that you wouldn't normally cross. But we'll get to that in a moment. Randall, from your perspective, that sort of release of inhibition, in the sense that, I mean, as I said, I mean, we don't pretend. I'm not a Carnival person. I don't get involved in it at all. I've never been drunk to, as far as I know, to understand what that means. But you hear people saying that, look, I mean, when you had a little nice something and you enjoy it, that really allows you to enjoy yourself and you're interfering with nobody, your head bad and you're having a good time, and that is part of the feeling of the time, and for some that's pure harmless enjoyment.
And that's it. I think it's equated to, I mean, our consumption of alcohol, that level of consumption. Sometimes a lot of people, as I said before, who may be stressed or not even stressed, who possibly just too busy at points in times, they get are not even too busy, sometimes just shy. There are people who are shy in nature that won't behave in that manner unless they get alcohol in the system. So when you go to the fete, the first thing you want is a cup. That is the reality, because normally, you see me walking down the street, I wouldn't behave myself in a manner like this. So to truly enjoy the fete, I need something to put my mind at ease, to not study who looking at me, to do business, and then after then there are certain songs that encourage you to drink, because they say drink it out, spend out your money till it's done. And I mean, while you're drinking alcohol, I mean, because I've drunk alcohol, I can tell you, while you're drinking alcohol, sometimes you believe what you're hearing. So they say, go by the bar and buy it out, you understand? So you go by the bar and buy it out and realize you have no money to go to work the next day. So that is the reality of it. It puts up a mental block. It kind of leaves you in a zone temporarily until you're sick the next morning. Then you realize you're back in the living room again. So I think it's something that after you've done it, it's not bad to have the experience, because after having the experience, you kind of know how to limit yourself. You kind of understand the consequences.
But do people limit themselves? That's the thing.
Well, sensible people. Yeah. If you're sensible enough and you're responsible enough, you'd realize and you'd look back at your actions the night before and realize possibly I mismanaged my financial affairs, possibly I didn't conduct myself in the manner I should have. So, I mean, it's about being responsible. Sometimes if you're unable to do it during the alcohol consumption, at least you can look back at yourself and say, did I really behave myself in a manner that I am proud of, or people expect me to behave as well?
Is it possible then, because the same way that we asked about defining that boundary in a time like this, is it possible to be responsible in an environment that seems to encourage irresponsibility, Ms. McFarlane?
It is possible.
And obviously many people do it, but many people don't as well.
It's always a choice. It is always a choice, because you don't start the night off drunk. You start the night off or the evening or for the day off in your normal, sensible mind. And you decide to have a drink, feel tipsy, and have another drink and another drink, so that you can now join the bacchanal that is happening, right? So you could feel free, as he just said, you know. So but it is possible, as sensible people, as he said.
Take me on that journey a little bit, because, again, explain the psychology of why someone who you'd see walking around daily, well-dressed, respectable, and going about their business and so on, feels it liberating to behave in a way during the season, or particularly, because I mean, there's people with their Halloween thing and they put on all kind of ridiculous costumes and so on. But would see it to behave in a way, or be skimpily clad or whatever, and conduct themselves in a way that to them is liberating, although seen and well-educated, well-positioned in business or in life or whatever. Explain, from what you understand, the psychology that makes someone feel that this is something they want to be part of, even if it is just for a couple of days or whatever.
Well, to begin, remember, we grew up with these images on TV for Carnival. We see our elder siblings probably going out, getting dressed up and feeling good. When the images that we see of Carnival and of that behavior, people are smiling, they're laughing, they're having fun. Then when you start probably going to parties and enjoying the culture, you start to realize that it does feel fun. Now, the high intensity activity coupled with rapid-paced music releases more cortisol in the brain, which gives you this feeling of exhilaration and energy. And that's a good feeling. It's a nice feeling. So having that feeling, plus having those images and having it be okay, because that is part of our culture, that's what we know, helps to encourage that behavior, helps to make us attracted to Carnival and to everything that it represents. Remember, this is not something that the masses see as terrible or something we shouldn't do. It is part of our culture in a subtle way. For Carnival, it's magnified, and it's allowed to be magnified. Right? It doesn't challenge us morally necessarily. Well, I'm speaking very generally. Of course, there are religious people, right?
I mean, we're trying to look at it from the fact is that Trinidad and Tobago overtly celebrates this and sees it as part of the culture.
Part of the culture, and it's okay. It's normal. People from around the world come and they enjoy it, and they agree that it is great. It's a fun time, and so because of that, coming from as a child, seeing it as normal, and then you yourself, as well as you mentioned, you feel like you need this release, this catharsis sort of. It is quite cathartic in that you get to just kind of forget a lot of your stresses, and that's something that is actually part of the language. We speak about that. So even growing up, you hear people say, Carnival time, you get to forget all your problems. So all of these things help to kind of set it up in our minds that Carnival is a time for release of stress, freedom of expression, creativity, looking good, feeling good. Who doesn't want those things? what you're looking at too is the dark side of it.
Yeah.
So I think there needs to be balance in that, yes, have a great time, but what about, as you said, the consequences afterwards?
Sure, and we'll go to that as far in a while, the whole issue of the balance and the consequences in a bit. But Ronald, what is your feeling on that? Because, I mean, again, it depends a whole lot on how you're brought up. If you're brought up in an environment where it's say, see this carnival thing, that's the devil work, stay far from it, you will grow up that way. Again, because a significant number of, and because it's a national festival, it's celebrated and so on, it is seen as perfectly normal. But from your own point of view, is it something that you see as the stress reliever sort of thing, that this is the time when all the issues that we've had to deal with on a regular basis, you could put that aside and just play yourself?
Well, me personally, my personal perspective, I mean, I think that's the furthest thing from the truth. As identified before, you get to the problems the next morning, sometimes in a deeper problem. If you know you have a harsh financial consequence, you just lost a job or something, I think your mind should be on more proactive approaches in your life. More as to say, well, boy, let me just unwind and go and forget everything, throw my hands up in the air, my children are going to feed them tomorrow, because when you come home the other day, they have to eat and you have to find food for them. So for me personally, I say it's all dependent on that, the way you live your life or the way you project things in your life. That to me, it's not beneficial, it's not stress relieving. I mean, if you want to have a good time, you decide to go at any point in time. So for me, if I want to go out anywhere, I could enjoy myself. I could be relaxed. I could be comfortable. It doesn't even have to be for occasion. You know, some people wait for their birthdays to feel this particular way. Some people wait for Christmas to feel a particular way. Some people feelings are seasonal. I believe it's more about myself, how I internalize what I think about myself and what I do personally. That's my personal perspective. I'm not going to say that some people don't, because of tradition, they enjoy certain times or certain periods more, or they have a greater expectancy. But as I say, that's something I think that is individual. But I don't think that any particular season per se, or actually just not caring at all, could actually bring you ease of mind. Not caring at all, or not having the level of responsibility you're accustomed having. Sometimes, I'm not saying that people are blatantly irresponsible, but I mean having your guards down sometimes leads an opening for more danger.
You know, you often wonder if there's an inverse relationship, that the extent to which a society, whether it's Trinidad Carnival or Brazil Carnival or any other type in any other part of the world, that the more people want to celebrate, right, it means that maybe the more that there is stress and so many issues in the society that forces people to believe that freeing up at that time will actually allow them to escape those issues. But we'll take a break and continue our dialogue, because we're talking primarily about carnival and sexuality is our topic, but we're trying to understand, first of all, the psychology of it before we go into those issues. And is it something to be celebrated, that ability to be free and to be liberated? Or what about the downsides and the dark sides and the consequences of that type of behavior? Is it that we are the net effect as far as sexuality and human relationships and family relationships, is the net effect of carnival a positive or a negative? The net effect, a positive or a negative? We'll be back here on Morning Edition.
You didn't do something.
Everybody coming in. We ready to go.
6:43 in Trinidad and Tobago. The some early morning sun. Let's return to downtown Port of Spain, to the studio of TV6, as we continue our dialogue on carnival and sexuality with our two guests, Kelly McFarlane, clinical psychologist and public relations officer of the Trinidad and Tobago Association of Psychologists, and Rundle Fields, president of the Single Fathers Association. And as we continue on, I need to just take a quick segue and commend your organization for the support that you're giving to the family of the boy who lost his father last Thursday, was it, in Mayaro, who died rescuing his son, and your organization has come forward to support the family?
Yes, most definitely. That's Mr. Daryl Garcia. The story actually, touched us to see her father lay his life. I always say there's no greater love than someone that would lay their life down for someone else. It being his very own son. And I mean, I understand the predicament. I spoke to the mom yesterday as well. And one of our members came forward and he donated a $4,000 school supply grant to her. So he's pledged that, and I mean, we delivered to her. So for the new school term, she would have that assistance for the 2 children. Also, I would have gotten in contact with Corporal Small, who would have gotten in contact with the Sandy Grant, the Victim and Witness Support Unit, who will ensure that they will have counsel for the children. I mean, you know, this kind of, it's kind of devastating for the children right now. So definitely we had to look at the holistic well-being of the children as well. So I know the Victim and Witness Support, they would assist as well. And we also I intend to make contact with Mr. Vijay Ganga Prasad to see if he further assist when it comes to public assistance.
And he's with the Social Development Ministry,
yeah, Ministry of Social Development. Seeing that the father was the main breadwinner, and he's no longer there as well. So I mean, condolences go out to the family again on behalf of us at the Single Fathers Association, and we're glad to do whatever little we could have done.
Indeed, that is to be commended as well. And just to point out again that people need to be careful in Mayaro. You see that East Coast, you see those currents, and from what we understand, where they were, when they got into difficulty, was the level of the water wasn't all that high. Even the strongest swimmer will struggle in those currents. So, and we're talking about Carnival. A lot of people look to escape Carnival, go Mayaro, go camp, and so on. A lot of people. And we always sadly get this story, apart from all the Carnival wildness and so on, who died and who drowned and who this and that on this camp, on this church trip and whatever else it is. We urge you people, parents, adults especially, exercise control over young people who might feel invincible, whether with alcohol or not, who might feel invincible, that they're strong, they know how to swim, they're better than Michael Phelps, and so it don't matter. Those currents are so strong, we will pull anybody under. So we urge you, please, exercise caution along the East Coast at any time of the year. Let's return to our dialogue, Ms. McFarlane and Rondell. When we talk about Carnival and sexuality, which is the topic of our discussion, from an adult perspective, and those boundaries that you mentioned, especially among young people, young men, young women, in a highly sexualized environment. We know the world that we live in. We know the videos that are transmitted to one another. We know the culture that celebrates a certain type of behavior. And then you tack on a carnival environment to that. Is it the recipe, Ms. McFarlane, for irresponsible behavior by young men towards young women and the young women who see themselves as attractive and alluring to the males as well, that creates that environment for irresponsible behavior?
I think it is a trigger, but there's a much deeper issue when you talk about irresponsible behavior. And are you kind of talking about sexual harassment and
yes, absolutely.
Right. We know that there are people who can consume alcohol and not harass other people, right? But we do know also that alcohol disinhibits us and makes us not read social cues properly and might, get in other people's way. The deeper issue then is the person before the alcohol, what they have been exposed to, what they need to feel powerful. If they are a person that would typically interfere with other people and get into other people's personal spaces without being invited there. And that could come from peer pressure. It could come from just never knowing how to speak to other people and respect other people. It could come from what they've seen growing up. It could come from their needs for power. It could come from psychological issues such as sociopathology, some sort of personality disorder like narcissism or borderline personality traits. Many things could lead to it, but the setup or the sort of collective behavior and the alcoholism and all these things that we've spoken about by itself wouldn't be causing it.
Right. So I was just going to get to that. So if I understand you correctly, it's not that alcohol caused it,
no,
but there was an inclination before based on your condition by whatever,
yes,
and the alcohol is just the accelerator.
Absolutely.
In that direction.
Absolutely.
But Ronald feels in that, again, because we're talking about an environment and a culture. You deal with a lot of young people, you deal with a lot of families at many different levels. in an environment like this, is it that young people who are conditioned to either to disrespect women, maybe to see women as nothing more than sexual objects, who see women as this is the time for conquest, this is the time to show you're a real man in that sense, and that the environment just accelerates that sort of situation?
Well, I mean, it's a highly sexual environment. Let's be real. You're rubbing up on each other, alcohol, the environment, as I say, it's not always the best. It's about you being personally responsible, and that goes for men and it goes for women as well. It goes both ways, because a man could be standing and then a group of women come and jam him, so to speak. And
all the pictures that we see on the papers with women whining, because I mean, you don't see that men whine, because again, this is primarily a masculine dominated side, very misogynistic in many ways, and the idea why the papers put it is because they figure that all these men want to see all these half naked women whining about the place.
All right, and I mean, and it's very important that they said culture, because in our culture, it's acceptable to do that. It's acceptable for a group of women to jam a man, and he's a boss if that happens. But jam a man, a band of men jamming a woman is highly unacceptable. You see it even with the police officers, the fire officers, they're standing straight. I remember someone made an issue some years ago, and they said they're not supposed to whine on the police officers. And a number of women were upset about that. They say they come to Carnival to whine up on the police. That is the reality of it. But think about a group of men in Carnival seeing a female police officer and go and jam she on the car, so to speak. That would be to say, right?
Yes.
It will raise a whole different connotation, a different discussion of
Remember the controversy that was created in a it's a different context, a political context. Remember that issue at the PNM event where the woman was dressed in yellow, surrounded by men in red, and how it was presented in like ganging up on a woman in a certain way.
But that's what I'm saying. So our culture has a lot to do with it. Our culture, the way we are cultured as what is acceptable for women is acceptable for men. So I mean, what is acceptable? That is what the big question is. What do we accept? As a man, what do we accept as a woman? What is respectful? Is it okay a woman invites me to dance and then the song that's playing saying, hold a woman and jam she had. And you start to follow what you hear, the song, alcohol in your mind, and then she doesn't accept that, and then she's offended. So it's such a ticklish position that people just need to be very careful, very mindful, particularly men. Trust me when I tell all you need to be very careful about how you carry yourself, about things you do, things you might think someone is enjoying. It's always best to go and be within the space of your friends. Yes, if you go with a group, stay within your group, dance with your group. It's always the safest thing, because you go to dance with a stranger, you don't know what the person going to find acceptable. The person might jump on top of you, you may not like it. You might try to pick up the person, she may not like it. You all don't know each other, you all don't understand each other. Values, it's just really alcohol possibly or sexual drive at that point in time that brought you all to each other to participate in a dance. You just need to be very, very mindful that there's some level of miscommunication between both parties.
Is there an unofficial understanding, that you referenced social cues a couple of times, that in an environment like that, the social cues don't apply?
Not that they don't apply. Under the influence of alcohol, you don't receive them. You don't perceive them.
The reason I put it that way is that for someone who would have been physically confronted in an inappropriate way in that environment, whether it's a woman or a man, is it proper for me to say, well, what you went there for?
No. No. So then, what do you mean why you went there? Why you danced with
what did you expect going into an environment like that?
Well, that's a controversial stance, and you have to be very PC about this. But
this is not the place of political correctness, because you understand what I'm saying, eh?
Yeah.
I understand fully that, and I take your point, that before the alcohol, you would have been influenced and by the way you brought up and so on. But given it's sort of like, the victim blaming thing.
Absolutely.
I know, because people afraid that. But let's just explore that a little bit. If I have a daughter and she's working in a place where she has to walk in a dark alley to get to where she works, and I tell her, dear, I don't think it's safe for you to do that. Is that victim blaming or is that sensible?
Okay. It's sensible. It towards the line a little bit, and let me explain. So, for instance, if we come back to Carnival, why did you go there? You know these kinds of things happen, right? That's harassment and the crimes and so on are not the majority of what happens when you go to Carnival, right? You have more fun than you have incidents. Anytime a person is assaulted, the fault is always on the assailant, the person who assaulted them.
Yes.
Always, right? We should be able to enjoy our culture and without having to worry about somebody else's, ideals or what they think they are allowed to do with you affecting us.
Which is that's why I brought it up in the context of which I did, because what I'm saying is that in a normal, rational thinking environment, those points that you made are very valid. But when you're in an environment, as Rondell pointed out, loud music blasting in your ear, pointing you in a particular, encouraging you, alcohol involved as well, and maybe an inclination to behave in a certain way. To be in that environment and expect social cues to be observed, societal norms to be observed, isn't that naive?
To an extent, and that's why a lot of the bands have security for that very reason. That's why we have certain laws, and that's why a lot of people go with their team, with their group of people that could protect them. So we take measures to ensure that things like that don't happen to you, to us as an individual. But I understand what you're saying in that we know that this happens in this environment. So then part of the onus is on us to protect ourselves always. But it also points to an issue whereby we have to educate young men and women about how to behave in any environment. People who come out of situations or families whereby abuse is normal or walking over someone else's rights and personal space is normal, have to be rehabilitated, so to speak, have to be, taught how to deal with people in social environments. And again, that's why we have laws. But that is where the problem lies, in the people who commit these crimes.
Indeed, and we're going to continue our dialogue. We're going to talk a bit more, as we expected. But when you're talking about a thing like Carnival and sexuality, and because Carnival is such an all-pervasive sort of an event, there are many different angles in which we can look at it. And when we come back after the news at the top of the hour, we'll continue the dialogue with our two guests in our Family Focus segment.
She
5 minutes after 7 o'clock in Trinidad and Tobago. Well, that was a nice image, watching the morning sunshine streaming between the buildings and onto the road. Continuing our discussion with our two guests in our Family Focus series, Carnival and Sexuality, Part 1 from the adult perspective, and we hope to have Part 2 from the impact on the children and the children's involvement and that perspective, which will be coming up next week, God willing, which is appropriate because after that I go on for a month until after the Carnival period. But we're coming towards the end of the second season of our Family Focus series. Let's continue our dialogue with our two guests, Kelly McFarlane, clinical psychologist and public relations officer of the Trinidad and Tobago Association of Psychologists, and Rondell Fields, president of the Single Fathers Association. In the time that we have available to the bottom of the hour, I think the whole issue of Carnival and sexuality is sort of like a given. It's like bat and ball, that sort of thing. That it goes hand in hand because of the nature of the event. But consequences is something that we want to touch on a bit. As positive elements, yes. Consequences, positive, negative, and so on, because there's a lot of focus as well on the impact of that highly energized, highly sexualized type of environment. Ms. McFarlane, from your perspective, the consequences of a Carnival experience, negative elements to it?
Well, Mr. Fields spoke earlier about, horning season, is it? That you have consequences, financial consequences.
Yeah, we use it in our introduction to take our wine, which is perfectly normal. That this is horning season.
Yes.
That this is the time, if men are on the prowl, women experience something different from the norm. So it's that what we would call promiscuous type of behavior is actually encouraged at this time, and therefore consequences.
Absolutely, consequences in your relationship, consequences within yourself internally, in that you might feel a lot of regret, you might feel loss, you might feel sort of loss of self-respect because of things that you might have done that you don't want to face. So yeah, you have those negative psychological, financial, and interpersonal consequences. For some people, those who were able to sort of just have fun and maintain their self-respect and the stuff that they did, and they didn't get harassed and so on, they just had that period of time of just exhilaration and excitement and happiness that would make lasting memories and kind of just, leave them in a place of euphoric happiness,
And Randall, in that sense, as we talk about consequences, because we often assume that they will be all negative, but as Ms. McFarlane said correctly, there are many people I know who, when we used to play cricket and when Carnival come around, and after the Carnival and I find out about it, they had a whale of a time. They didn't behave irresponsibly with anybody else, and therefore they always look forward to the Carnival, because they say they know the boundaries, they know where the lines not to cross, they're always with their crew and so on, and they have a fantastic time for the Carnival.
And that might be very well true. Is that how that person is brought up, as I said, or the culture? I mean, a person who's religious not going to see things in that perspective at all. But someone who's grown up as a child, possibly the parents took them to Kiddies Carnival, they're accustomed going Calypso Monarch. Some of them traditionally look forward to these things, and they have a hell of a time. It's a hell of a time, so to speak. And I mean, some of the people also, I mean, based on their involvement, some of them, if they're involved in the craft, if they're involved in the arts, if they're involved in music, is something that they look forward to as well. So as I say, to each his own. So other people, they may see a lot more negative coming out of some of the things that she identified. I think it's for you said horning season, eh? Not
yeah. I would take responsibility for that.
You see the consequence of also, I mean, the financial side. And I think to me that is a very serious thing at this point in time. I want people to consider that as a businessman myself. You want to make sure that, I mean, if you now lose your job at Petrotrinian, now lose your job somewhere, things are unstable, that you don't further destabilize it, you understand? You want to make sure
but
that you find stability.
But they might say, well, look, this is precisely the reason why I'm going to enjoy myself this long.
And that is a foolish reason. That is a foolish way to reason, because at the end of the day, you're still going to wake up the next day with your bills. You may have more bills, you may have more challenges now. I mean, you project that image that night that everything carefree and you're happy and you feel so good. You're going to sunk yourself into alcohol to make yourself feel better, but really and truly you're not feeling worse the day after. So I mean, to me, I always say, even I mean, that's just my personal take on it. I mean, even though I could afford to go to Carnival every year, I don't go in and spend that money. That's just my perspective. I could find something better to do with that money. At the end of the day, the people say, yeah, you have one life to live. Yeah, but I live in other lives to live after me. I have children. So long and short of the story, I look going forward, and I mean, my personal perspective, as I said, I think mainly financially, people need to know if they're in a position to play. You have to be real with your circumstance. Don't just go because your crew go in, and your crew can afford to go, and you want to be in that crew. If you know your pocket can meet that crew requirements, find the next crew. That is the reality of it. I think people need to really start to think post-Carnival too, as well. I mean, you want to have fun? Go in the back of your house, put on your music, have a time, go down the road, possibly get a drink or two with a couple of your friends. You can have the same amount of fun, I believe. So, I mean, I think the financial consequences, what a lot of people should consider, whether you're not morally inclined to any particular thing, spiritually inclined to anything, no matter what, you must have a financial inclination. Are you doing well or you're doing bad? And you should, every single person should be honest with where they are financially before you delve into further debt.
And Mr. Fowler, is it difficult? I mean, because we're talking about a situation, this whole discussion about Carnival and sexuality. I wonder if we're talking more about those who are in a vulnerable situation based on the whole issue of either the way they've been brought up, the way they've been educated. We're not just talking about income levels or social status or whatever, but because of whatever they've been conditioned by, however they were brought up and so on, that they find it very difficult to contain their emotions and their behavior at a time, and therefore they are more vulnerable to irresponsible behavior, to not recognizing those social cues, and therefore they are the ones who more than anyone else suffer the consequences of irresponsible behavior. Is that something that can ever be dealt with in a serious way, in a kind of a setting like Carnival? Is that something that can be dealt with at all?
When you say dealt with,
what I'm trying to say is to minimize, to make people, in the same way that Rondell is talking about that, when you say be responsible for Carnival, the same way I'm going to say be responsible, like all the alcohol companies, they say be responsible, which is kind of like a get-out clause for saying we want you to drink yourself drunk, but then be responsible, or drive responsibly, kind of, that kind of thing. Don't drink and drive. Is that I'm trying to find out how to say it, but basically what I'm trying to say is that, does it make sense to even talk about being responsible during Carnival?
It's necessary. It's necessary, but maybe as I kind of looked into earlier, we need to go a little deeper and start a little earlier. So the last time we was here, we were talking to kids about sex and so on, right? And we talked about how we have to start these things from early because the images are out there. So we see these images and we grew up seeing these images as okay. And then if there's not someone to tell us, okay, this is okay to a point, or this part of it is okay, but that part isn't okay. And we just grew up seeing everything and saying, well, this is where I'm supposed to be, this is what I'm supposed to be doing because I am part of this culture. That's when things could start to, be more disastrous. So yes, guidance, both privileged and underprivileged people have could have psychological vulnerabilities that could lead them to make very bad decisions or drink too much or not regulate themselves.
And that's why I said that it's not limited to, because and I mean, there is that stereotype. And I mean, whether people like it or not, they'll say that the poor, uneducated black people from wherever and so on, who are struggling economically, they are the ones more vulnerable. But the evidence is there that the so-called upper classes and the well-to-dos and that sort of thing have similar issues that arise when they are unable to control themselves in particular type of environments. So that's why I wanted to make sure that it did not be seen as we're stereotyping any particular group. But I just wonder, therefore, that how do you then cope with do you not step back and say, because the consequences of behaving in a certain way, going with another woman or going with another man, because this is the time, and the consequences after that, so how do you rationalize that? That's what I'm trying to get at, that you could be in a situation where you say, well, I go and do it and whatever, and then afterwards you're facing all of this emotional stress.
It comes down to values, and because if we have different values, we might have the same consequences, but it would affect us differently. If you're a family man and something threatens the security of your family, it might be a huge no-no for you. If you're somebody who believes in being free, or it's like, oh well, if you lose your girlfriend or your wife, then it's, you might have that experience and go do the same thing again because you feel like you will bounce back, or you feel like the experience is worth more than the consequences that you'll have to face later. And then of course there are some people who simply don't think about the future. They just have tunnel vision. What's happening now is what I'm enjoying and where I want to be, and they're not thinking about what might happen later. And that's part of personality sometimes, right? Not everybody is very future thinking. So definitely, I mean, these are the things that we kind of have to look at when we think about whether, consequences would change behavior. Unfortunately, it doesn't always change behavior. And I would put it in the context of values.
And Ronald, your view on that situation?
Well, I mean, definitely I would say sometimes we use Carnival as an excuse. That going back to that whole horning season scenario, I cheat on my wife, I cheat on my husband and scenario. I think that had to be taking place in your mind before. possibly Carnival was just a good excuse.
Which is what Ms. Fallon alluded to earlier.
Yeah, exactly.
Because you already have an inclination towards a particular type of behavior.
Because, I mean,
and whether it's Carnival or alcohol, that's the trigger for it.
Was it there all the time, right? And the reality of it is, if you know you're going to be in such a space, why are you not there with your significant other in the first place? Why are you going and jump up without your husband? Why are you going to jump up without your wife? Why are you going to jump up without your girlfriend or your boyfriend? So it means you went for some level of freedom or escape, possibly from the relationship itself. So that excuse of saying, well, boy, it's one in season, so I could one now and I make a mistake. It's a mistake you wanted to make long time. And you just got an excuse, you know, they're going to have alcohol, they're going to have music there, and you think you may have a alibi by saying, hey, you know, too much music, the boys and them, the girls and them was drinking, I didn't know. But, I mean, I don't think that happened for the Carnival season. That happened in your mind a long time ago and played out during the Carnival season because you found the opportunity to do it there.
And therefore, I suppose, you know, people will be saying, well, why are you having this discussion now in Carnival season when everybody's supposed to be promoting the Carnival and so on? The fact of the matter is that if we're talking responsibly, we probably need to look at everything in a critical way. I mean, with many things that we like or we don't like, there are some positives, there are some negatives, and it's important for us to assess all of the situations in its entirety. And therefore, I suppose the difficult question, Ms. McFarlane, is that as far as the impact on society afterwards or generally, can we say that Carnival is neutral? Is it positive? Is it negative? Is it something that is really being blamed for a type of behavior that we have anyway, and we just hype it up during this time of the year?
It is a behavior that, but as I said, very subtly is in our culture, but it is magnified during that time. Sorry, what was the question?
Basically, okay, bottom line, is Carnival a positive or negative? From the point of view of social consequences about sexuality and so on.
I think there's more positive than negative, and I think that we aren't bashing Carnival. That's not the purpose of this. We are just saying, you know, be mindful of certain things, be careful about certain things, and that's all that it is. We have to be responsible for ourselves and our behaviors and our consequences thereafter. And we have to be aware of what the consequences could be and what could happen out there, and then we have to move to suit. So it's just about, and this is how we help Carnival to be safer, to be better, by bringing light to these issues and having people realize, okay, well, wow, that's true, you know, when I drink too much, this could happen and that could happen, and call people on their stuff and say, well, yeah, maybe I did have those thoughts before, and it's not just the alcohol that I'm blaming, and take responsibility for your actions and for what you might do in the future.
You think anybody really listens to that? Do you think that somebody, I mean, being facetious as always, but yeah, do you think anybody saying, you know, I'll listen to Ms. McFarlane said, you know what, I'll go change my behavior from now on. Is this man to hell with she is? I'm going to have a good time.
Well, if that's what their values are, and that's what is more important to them in life, matters most to them in life, then as long as they're being happy, if you're engaging in
as long as they're happy?
What I'm saying, if you're engaging in a behavior that is ruining your life and making you unhappy, and you continue to change nothing, you will continue to be unhappy. So if you hear good counsel, or you get advice, or something is brought to the light that you didn't see or think of before, and you decide, because it's always a choice, you choose to continue with your behavior as is, then you have chosen that life for yourself.
We'll take a break and continue in the final few minutes of our dialogue on Carnival and sexuality and the whole question of responsibility and consequences and triggers and inclinations and all of the different issues in our dialogue. We'll be back right after this break.
She gon' give it to who she want. My youth, you don't own it.
Feel bad and rhythm section. Play with that sweetness, you don't want to stay. I hammer under a mango tree. Go take all your stress away.
In the other direction, let's move back here to our studio with the few minutes that we have left with our two guests, Kelly McFarlane, clinical psychologist and public relations officer of the Trinidad and Tobago Association of Psychologists, and Rondell Fields, president of the Single Fathers Association. In the final few minutes that we have left, because we've identified this topic this morning as the whole question of carnival and sexuality, but we've obviously branched it off into, because sexuality has to do with habits and behaviors and so on, and whether carnival is a positive or a negative, and different perspectives in relation to that. Before we wrap up this morning, Mr. McFarlane, how would you sum up your perspective on carnival and sexuality? What would be your overarching view on it?
Carnival is a time of, creativity, expression, coming together, no matter race or political affiliation. It's a time of feeling good and happy. I think that we have to be mindful, though, that we have a responsibility to protect ourselves, be it by either monitoring the way we drink, that we eat before we go out, that we have friends around us who we can trust, who will keep us safe, or who we can keep safe, and so on. I think as a society, we have a responsibility to look out for others. If we see something happening, get involved, stop people from harassing other people. And I think that people, and this might sound strange, but if you know that you have an inclination to get drunk and harass people, that you have to look into why you do that, what it does for you, and understand and know that it is wrong and it is not okay, and that you have to, figure out, how to stop that type of behavior. So I think carnival is positive. There can be negative things about it, but we just have to start taking responsibilities and behaving differently.
Ronald?
On the very same thing, be mindful, be respectful, be considerate, be responsible, basically. As I said, you can't tell people not to enjoy a festival that they look forward to. To other people, they don't really look forward to it that much. But it's generally about people having respect. Keep your mind in the right place, keep your finances in the right space. That is what I continue to speak about, because I realize there's a challenge we have in Trinidad and Tobago right now. I implore people to consider your financial position before you put yourself into further debt and these kind of things like that. Carnival is a big business, as I say, so on the good end, for the business people, it's very beneficial. But people, the consumers, I implore you, look at your financial position that you're at right now before you decide to delve in. Delve in if you have to, but plan before you delve in, so to speak. You understand? Do so even responsibly. So it's on every level, be responsible as you can.
And just a final quick thoughts from both of you, if I can squeeze it in. And you obviously you're talking about enjoy yourself to a certain extent, know your limits, and be responsible and so on. Is there a greater responsibility on either the state or the private sector to promote those messages about? Yeah, they all make a lot of money. All the alcohol companies and whatever else make a lot of money from promoting at this time of the year especially. Should there also be a commensurate focus on responsible behavior? Should that be either the state or even the private sector which benefits? What's your view on that?
Both. Why not both? As somebody who's creating something, developing something for people to purchase that would have a certain impact on them, it is socially responsible for you to say, this could have this effect, be responsible. Just like the alcohol that you were talking about, drink responsibly, and the cigarette packs that say it causes cancer.
But drink responsibly, anybody just take that on? If
no, I don't think people
from
do.
a psychologist, does anybody take on that? Drink responsibly?
And that's the thing, the private sector wouldn't go further than that because they have to sell their alcohol. So in that sense...
should they be mandated to go further than that?
Well,
that's fun. That's fun. Tell me the corner you with time running out. Rondell, your view on that. Is it the state or the private sector?
Both of them. And protection and for the protection of the consumers, maybe they should be mandated to some level. It's important, yes, it's a business, but as you rightfully said, you're manufacturing something. You want people to be cautious of the goods, the bads, everything. Sensitized.
But you're manufacturing something that causes people to forget who they are.
Well, you said that, not me. But
no,
but it's the reality of it.
Yeah.
So what they should do is to take that responsibility. I don't even think the sales is going to dwindle in any way. because I mean it's at every party, it's at every club. As I say, people enjoy partaking in these substances. No matter how higher is it in the budget, sure, it still sells. So I mean, there's just a level of responsibility that they should have even from the private sector and the government. More ads possibly to sensitize people on dangers and these things that may occur during this season.
All right, well, that's a good way to end our segment. And a comfortable question to create some interesting dialogue during the course of the morning. And as always, especially for our guests for Wednesday, there's much more they can be doing with their time on a Wednesday morning than sitting down for almost an hour and a half to discuss these social issues, especially if you're coming from afar, as our two guests would have been. We really appreciate Ms. McFarlane and Rondell Fields for taking the time to join us once again in our Family Focus series, Carnival and Sexuality from an adult perspective. Next week, if we can put all things together as we hope to do, we should be looking at the same topic, but as to how it impacts upon the children of our society, and hopefully that should make for another interesting dialogue. We'll be back right after this break.